Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little video and this subject that I thought would be very particularly interesting. Now, on my channel, I don't usually talk about NBA basketball quite as often. I just don't, really tend to get to that subject as often on my channel. But I'm probably going to start talking about this and some other sports a little bit more because NBA basketball is my favorite team sport to watch. I think that the amount of skills that it can take as an all-around NBA player, I think that it makes the sport very entertaining to watch. And once again, as an all-around accumulation of skills, there's just so many different things that you could really get great at in order to become a great all-around basketball player. Not just, of course, scoring the basketball, but in what way you score the basketball. Are you a mid-range threat? Are you a long-range threat? Are you maybe both of them? Are you very good in the post? Are you really, someone that maybe likes to work a little bit more on the elbow? Are you a great passer? Are you a great assist man? Are you someone that, can get the ball in a rebound type of way? Do you play well off the ball? Are you a person that works well behind screens? Do you have excellent ball handling abilities? Do you have great hand-eye coordination? There's so many different skills that you can have in terms of really playing basketball and in terms of being an all-around great basketball player. But anyways, the point of this conversation that I'm going to see right here, and I thought, why not talk about this, pretty much right before the actual NBA playoffs, is this is a little bit of a conversation about Mr. Jayson Tatum. And Jayson Tatum has had a very interesting career. And I remember when I first seen Jayson Tatum, of course, he's been playing with the Boston Celtics for all of his career, I believe. The first time that I remember seeing Jayson Tatum, at least, according to my recollection, was all the way back in that one series. I think it was in 2018, with the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers in that one Eastern Conference Finals series. And I actually thought that the Boston Celtics were going to beat LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers because LeBron, although he still had talent on his team, he didn't really have, other than maybe Kevin Love, a real second superstar on that team. I mean, Kevin Love was a all-star worthy player, maybe perhaps, but LeBron definitely was down, a little bit of a man that season because I believe that they were expecting to get somebody for Kyrie Irving, and of course, it did not come to fruition. Kyrie Irving basically hightailed his ass out of there because of a little bit of a friction between himself and LeBron James, and that's what ended up happening. But anyways, point being is that I remember Jayson Tatum, and the Boston Celtics taking LeBron James to that 7-game series, and I remember Jayson Tatum, I believe, anyways, performing very decently well. And I said that in my personal view that the Boston Celtics that they're going to be a very big threat a little bit later on, and it's only going to be a matter of time before they win an NBA championship. And of course, it was only a matter of time before they won an NBA championship, but to be quite honest with you, it was way, way, way too long of a process, especially for the amount of talent and executive decisions and, great coaching that really they had to work with. And certain people, of course, may blame, maybe Brad Stevens. They may blame some of the executive decisions. They may blame, maybe overall that there was just too great of teams around at the certain amount of time or that time. But to be quite honest with you, in my personal view, Jayson Tatum does have to take a little bit of that blame because Jayson Tatum at certain times has shown that sometimes he will mentally crack. And I'm not stating that Jayson Tatum is necessarily quote unquote weak necessarily. I'm not stating that, he's someone that is just completely mentally fragile. But there are certain athletes to where you can kind of take advantage of them mentally, or sometimes in big spots, they just don't always perform up to optimal. It just is what it is. And we've seen that with Jayson Tatum, not only in the 2022 NBA Finals against Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, where the Warriors were able to win within 6 games. We also seen that last year in the finals against the Dallas Mavericks, where he really did not perform much better, to be quite honest with you. And on top of that, he's also cost his team certain series against the Miami Heat, against the Milwaukee Bucks, all when he pretty much, always had enough talent on the team and always had great enough coaching to really compete with those type of teams. So the question is, about certain people, now that Jayson Tatum, now that he has won an NBA championship and he should be looked at as an NBA champion, the question is from a certain amount of people is, why is he not looked at as a guy that is given enough credit? Why is he underlooked by a certain amount of people? Because there's certain people that not only would put certain champions like Nikola Jokic or Giannis Antetokounmpo above him or Stephen Curry, but also would put certain guys that have never even made an NBA Finals before, like that of a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or an Anthony Edwards with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and of course Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being with the Oklahoma City Thunder. There are certain people that would even put them above a Jayson Tatum. Well, I'm here to kind of chime in and tune in with the conversation. Stephen A. Smith and Brian Windhorst are kind of talking about it. I just thought that it would be very particularly interesting. So let's get straight into it, and we're going to have the conversation. Is Jayson Tatum underrated? Is he overrated? Is he overappreciated? Is he underappreciated? So I thought that I would talk about this. Let's get into it. Let's see what Stephen A. Smith and some of these other guys have to say.
What he went through was winning an NBA championship, making All NBA for the fourth consecutive time, cementing the fact that he's going to be in the NBA Hall of Fame. Then he went through signing the largest contract in the history of Americans, the NBA. Then he went through winning a gold medal in the most competitive, tournaments ever.
I have to be honest, I've been blessed to do this show for a very long time.
Let me tell you what, Brian Windhorst, I don't always agree with him, but sometimes he does bring up some very good points in his NBA analytics or his NBA analyses. And he's also one of the most sassy analysts that I've personally seen on TV. Both him and Stephen A. Smith, to be quite honest with you. But Brian Windhorst, when he gets in one of those peppy moods, he makes me laugh.
That was one of my favorite moments on this show. That wasn't even all of it. You had to see Perk's face as well when Wendy was getting on our guy. Well,
Kendrick Perkins, one of the biggest idiots whenever it comes to sports talk or NBA talk, usually, period. Kendrick Perkins has a good take about 1 in every 10 takes.
Richardson said, "Not so fast." Listen up.
I've been around guys in the summertime after they win a championship. That's their victory lap. The whole narrative took and ruined Jayson Tatum's victory lap. It wasn't about him becoming a champion and being a man and all of this stuff. It was about him not winning the Eastern Conference MVP, not winning the Finals MVP.
Well, to respond to Quentin Richardson's point, let me bring this up. And a certain amount of people may disagree with me when I say this. It just is what it is. Because this guy is basically stating that, well, now that Jayson Tatum has won his NBA championship and won a finals, why are people still not happy overall with what he's done? Well, the first of all thing is this. You got to realize that a lot of people, they're just not going to be happy for you, period, whenever you have a victory. But there is some relevance overall to some of the criticism, in my personal view, that Jayson Tatum is getting. Listen, the bottom line is this. When you talk about Jayson Tatum winning that finals, all that is great, but that wasn't really his finals. And I know that a certain amount of people overall are going to disagree with me, but there's a reason why Jaylen Brown ended up not only winning the finals MVP, but also ended up winning the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Now, there are certain times where a player, for example, has won the finals MVP where I didn't think they were the most impactful player within that series. But at the end of the day, the point being is that Jayson Tatum, even if you want to take a look at his statistics, Jayson Tatum in both of his finals appearances, he hasn't been good. He hasn't really been that great. When you talk about that 2022 appearance, I believe that he was averaging about 22 points per game on about 36.7% shooting. And when you talk about last year in the finals, I think he was averaging a little bit more points on less than 40% shooting. He was like 38.8% shooting. So the thing is that if that were a player like a Nikola Jokic, or if that were a player like somebody else, like that of a Giannis Antetokounmpo or a Stephen Curry or someone like that, they would get absolutely crucified by that of the media. We would never hear the end of it. So Jayson Tatum, although certain people are stating, all this stuff about, oh, is he underappreciated? In my personal view, no, he's not. Because the thing is about Jayson Tatum is that whether people want to admit it or not, he's underwhelmed for that series, to be quite honest with you, or for that franchise for quite a long time. And I know that certain people are going to disagree with me on that, but listen, it just is what it is. For those of you that grew up during my generation of basketball, you remember the story of Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry, was probably, in my view, the most unnecessarily disrespected superstar athlete that I can personally remember of that particular era. I mean, the way that, and listen, I get it. The criticism after the 2016 finals, it was somewhat relevant. Steph Curry was terrible in that series. There's no doubt about it. He pretty much gave that series away. Of course, with, certain other things happening, like Draymond Green just being a regular fucking idiot, like what he is, but, and certain other things, of course. They were obviously trying to get, to get LeBron to win that series, to a certain degree. But still, Steph had the power in his hands in order to change history, and he was not able to do that. So Steph does have a little bit of blame within him. And for those of you that remember, all the criticism, with Steph Curry was that why can't he win the Finals MVP? He choked a 3-1 lead. He did this. He did that. And that's how you know that even these guys, they don't look at Jayson Tatum as on the level as those guys. It just is what it is. Because if they did, they would be criticizing him or holding him to the higher level standard. I remember when Stephen Curry, I remember when not only did he not get the Finals MVP, but then he choked that 3-1 lead in 2016, and then Kevin Durant joined the squad and they won a championship. All they criticized Steph Curry was, why can't he win the Finals MVP? Now, to be fair, one could debate, of course, that Kevin Durant, that he was maybe in certain times, at least on the surface, looked to be the best player on the team more than what a Jaylen Brown did over Jayson Tatum. But the thing is that Steph Curry, like people forget, Steph Curry was actually able to win a championship before Kevin Durant got there. And that's why it always kind of perplexed me that there was so much disrespect towards Stephen Curry. Like you had all these media guys that would always come out here and say, well, can Steph do anything without Kevin Durant? Like, what are you talking about? Steph Curry made 2 finals appearances and a finals win before Kevin Durant even got there. That's why I was really happy that Steph Curry ended up winning another championship all the way, in 2022, because the narratives on Steph Curry were absolutely insane. And don't get it twisted. There are certain criticisms you can have over Steph Curry, like him choking the 2016 lead and everything like that, and him maybe losing other series. Sure, there are certain criticisms that Steph Curry has. But the thing is that people were acting like he didn't do shit before Kevin Durant got there. He took the Warriors to a 67-win team, a team that was looked at as very good, but they weren't really favored to win the championship that year, even though LeBron James fans will tell you very different, but it is what it is. But they won 67 games that year. Steph Curry took them to the finals, and they ended up winning in 6 games. Now, of course, the Cleveland Cavaliers, were a little bit handicapped because of certain injuries. Yes, that's true. But of course they also ended up getting the Finals MVP to Andre Iguodala, which was really bullshit. They really should have gave it to Steph Curry because Steph Curry, I believe, was in that series shooting at around 40 to 43%, and he ended up averaging about 26 points per game. Andre Iguodala, although of course he had an immense impact, especially once they switched him on to LeBron James, if we're going to be real about the situation, the only reason why they gave that to Andre Iguodala is because they said, well, we really want to give this to LeBron James because LeBron James is the person that we're in love with and we've been on his dick for the past 10 years or the past at that time would have been like the past 5 years, and we want to make him to look the best way possible. People forget that there were certain guys like Max Kellerman and Shannon Sharp and other guys, Chris Broussard, I even think, or certain other guys that were saying that LeBron James really should be the MVP of that series. How can you be the MVP of a series and your team loses? Like, I've never heard any other people actually argue that other than guys like LeBron James or Aaron Rodgers fanboys, which if you notice often enough, many Aaron Rodgers and LeBron James fanboys, they're fans of that other athlete because they're very similar. Great statistically and talent-wise, oftentimes come up short when their team needs them, is what it is. That's how you notice that Shannon Sharp, he tries to claim that Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback of all time and that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time, and neither are true. But anyways, point being is that the reason why they gave that to Andre Iguodala is because it really should have went to Steph Curry because he had the best statistical performance out of any other player within that series in a winning effort. But they wanted to give it to LeBron James. So they said, well, since we can't give it to LeBron James, we're going to give it to the player that guarded LeBron James because that's really going to be our backhanded way of giving it to LeBron James. That's the main reason why Steph Curry didn't win that Finals MVP. So Steph Curry really should have been the Finals MVP in that series. They pretty much robbed him, but it is what it is. That was pretty much, the media being on LeBron James's dick. But anyways, point being is this. That's all the narrative was that Steph Curry, he couldn't do anything without Kevin Durant and blah, 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 and that he couldn't win the Finals MVP. That's all what the conversation was about. I remember that. Now, of course, certain people would argue that Steph Curry probably was held to a higher standard or was, ranked higher than a Jayson Tatum. But the point being is this, is that Jayson Tatum, although he's a relatively great player, there is going to be a little bit of criticism with him not being able to win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP or the Finals MVP. I mean, forget that you weren't even able to win the Finals MVP. You weren't even able to win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP when your team finally won a championship. So what does that really say about your team, about who was the more impactful player on that whole entire run? Now, Steph Curry, of course, in my view, was always the more impactful player on the Warriors, even though Kevin Durant, of course, won some of those finals MVPs. But Steph Curry kind of took a little bit of a back seat, at least in terms of what he could do all around, which in my view actually kind of affected him negatively in some of those years, and there was a little bit of tension, I think, starting to, get on in between them at the end of that, tenure, in 2018 and 2019, which is why I think it was good that they split up also in terms of their individual legacies to see what they could do once again without each other. But the thing is that, Steph Curry was always a guy that when you take a look at the numbers and when you take a look at his statistical output, Steph was always great during the playoffs and he was usually always great during the finals, except of course for that one series in 2016. Thing is about Jayson Tatum is that we can take a look at multiple flameouts that he's had. He didn't really do well in the 2022 NBA Finals. He was absolutely awful. And I think that he kind of mentally checked out a little bit in that series. He wasn't really that good last year in the NBA Finals. And also he cost his team in certain Miami Heat series and the Milwaukee Bucks series. And you're talking about a guy that has had some of the greatest amount of talent out of any other player within the past 10 plus years, and a guy that's had some of the greatest executives and some of the best coaching out of any other player. So at the end of the day, yes, when this guy, talks right here, whatever his name was, it's not going to be the regular victory lap because you were not able to do what other all-time great level players were able to do, which was officially lead that team to the NBA championship and be debatably the most impactful player in that squad. Because you were not the most debatable, you were not the most impactful player in that squad during that run. You weren't. It was Jaylen Brown.
What's retirement look like for Sue Bird?
Okay. Stephen A., it's time for you to weigh in. Do you think Jayson Tatum and Boston have been disrespected?
Let me answer this question very quickly. Do I believe that Jayson Tatum is being disrespected as an all-around player? No, personally, I do not. And I understand that a certain amount of people are going to say, well, he won them a championship. Did he really win them the championship, or did Jaylen Brown really win them the championship? Now, Jayson Tatum, of course, is a guy that definitely helped them win a championship. I'm not saying that he didn't have any role in it. But the point being is that this video is directly correlated with placing Jayson Tatum in the top 5 NBA players in the league. He's not a top 5 NBA player in the league, not in my personal view. When you talk about the top 5 NBA players in the league, you're talking about right now Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, and maybe somebody else. I'd have to really think on that. But in my personal view, how can you be in the top 5 in the NBA when you're debatably not even the best player on your team? I mean, there are certain people that, of course, they've been top 5 players, like Kobe and Shaq, and they were on the same team, and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, and, of course, Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But they also were able to show their individual impact even without each other. What has Jayson Tatum ever really done without Jaylen Brown? We don't know because they've always been with each other.
Well, I don't think Boston has been disrespected. I think that Jayson Tatum, you could say disrespect. I would just point out it's a lack of appreciation for what this guy brings to the table.
Well, what does Jayson Tatum really bring to the table? What Jayson Tatum really brings to the table is that, he's a great, scorer. He's a guy that, in my view, is a decent volume shooter. He's a guy that can, I'm not actually sure what his shooting percentages is. Maybe during the regular season, it's about anywhere from 45 to 50, to 49%. I'm not quite sure. If I had to guess, anywhere from around 46 to 47%, that's great. But during the playoffs, it's going to lower. And in his 2 finals appearances, he didn't even shoot 40% from the field. I'm sorry, but it is what it is.
Be an all-NBA player the last 3. It will now be the last 4 years in a matter of days or so, okay? To average at least 23 points a game the last 6 seasons. To average at least 26 points the last 7 seasons. To be a career 23.6 point per game scorer shooting nearly 46% from the field and 37 from 3-point range. All of those things are individual stats. Let me give you the cumulative stats from a team perspective, okay? He's a champion. Okay, this is a guy and got drafted third overall in 2017. And basically, it's a situation where that ended up ending Brian Colangelo's career, because you're in Philadelphia and you get hoodwinked in the surrender in the pick. You move down, you move up to the number 1 slot to take Markelle Fultz or what have you, and you passed up on Jayson Tatum. You never really recovered from that. This Jayson Tatum, who's been drafted in 2017. 5 Eastern Conference Finals appearances, 2 NBA Finals appearances, an NBA championship, okay, a Conference Finals MVP. When you think about, and has never missed the playoffs. This is who we're talking about here.
Right, but I mean, listen, I'll give him this much credit that he's never missed a playoffs. I'll give him that much credit. But when you have guys like, Udoka, whatever that one coach's name was, when you have Brad Stevens, when you have, Danny Ainge, as an executive, when you have, so many other, things, and then on top of that, you have Jaylen Brown, you eventually got Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, you had Kyrie Irving on there. Well, I mean, I'll kind of let the Kyrie Irving thing slide because we all know that Kyrie Irving is not the best of leaders. He's not really someone that can win a championship as a leading position guy. But the thing is that you've had so much talent. And if you're supposed to be the guy that is going to lead, your team all the way home, you're supposed to perform better than what you did in both finals appearances, period, point blank.
The way, did I bring up that he's a model citizen? Never gets in any kind of trouble. Doesn't get bad press. I mean, nothing. The closest this...
Right, but Stephen A., come on. Like, who gives a shit? And I understand what Stephen A. Smith is trying to say. Listen, that's great. Don't get it twisted. That is a great virtue. That is a great quality, because not every player or not every person knows how to take care of themselves, conditioning-wise, or, doesn't know how to get off, in terms of trouble, outside of the court. We've seen certain players do that. But at the end of the day, you're supposed to be one of the top 10, the top 5 best NBA players in the league. Those standards are expected of you, okay? So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to give Jayson Tatum this extra cookie, overall because, he doesn't get, in any bad things invested, in the offseason. Who gives a shit? You're supposed to do that. That's what's expected of you. The question is that were you able to bring your team home when it mattered the most? And to be quite honest with you, it wasn't really him. It was Jaylen Brown.
This guy.
And to be honest with you, I don't even believe that he was the second most impactful player of that series. I think the second most impactful player of that series was Kristaps Porzingis. That's just my view.
Has come to negative press was this past Olympics, when he was on the bench because Steve Kerr couldn't find it within himself to play this man over the course of 40 minutes. You and I have a disagreement about that, because my point is that it's a difference between not playing somebody and going up to an all-world player beforehand and telling them, I don't know if I'm going to be able to 5 minutes for you. I can never get over that. I cannot, and I think Steve Kerr's one of the top 6 coaches in the history of basketball. But that's how I feel about it. Jayson Tatum.
I'm not really quite sure about that. I'd have to really see, who my top 6 coaches would be. If you're talking about my top 3 of all time, I mean, you're definitely talking about Phil Jackson, Pat Riley, Greg Popovich would probably be up there. Trying to think of some other coaches that I might put up there. I'd have to really think, but Steve Kerr, I mean, I'll give it to the man. The man has 4 championships, and they have several finals appearances. So I mean, Steve Kerr is, he could be up there.
Personifies everything practically. I mean, he doesn't have the personality of an Ant-Man. He doesn't have the appeal of a Steph Curry or a LeBron James. That's about the only thing, in my estimation, that you can say about him. In terms of his production and what he brings to the table, he's one of the elite superstars this game has ever seen in terms of being a model citizen and somebody who performs, and he should be...
Right, but why do we keep bringing up overall that he's a model citizen? It's no offense, but whenever I usually hear someone bring up this stuff about he's a nice guy or he's a model citizen, what that usually means is that their argument is running out of bullets. That's usually what that means. When you have to bring up shit off the fucking court, unless we're comparing them to a player that directly has issues off the court, I really don't give a shit about any of that. It just is what it is. To me, that's null and void. It's great that Jayson Tatum does what he does, and he's a very good player. But do I think that, he's one of the greatest superstars? I mean, I'm not really quite sure about that. What I'll state is this, I watched this one channel, or, I used to watch this channel on YouTube. Of course, I still watch his Patreon. The name, of course, was Chronicles of Judah 144. And Chronicles of Judah 144 always used to say something that I would slightly agree with, but I would just phrase it in a different way. What he would state was that in his personal view, that there were only really 4 to 5 superstars per every generation. And what he meant by superstars was really championship level players. Well, I actually disagree with that because in my personal view, to me, there's a difference between a superstar and a difference between a championship level player. Because if we're just comparing it to say like in Hollywood or movie arrangements, there are certain people that would be quote unquote superstars, but you know that they're never going to win an Oscar. Like Chris Pratt, for a certain amount of time, he was white hot, overall in Hollywood. No pun intended, of course. But I mean, the thing is that, he was like red to white hot, in terms of Hollywood. He was in Jurassic World, then Guardians of the Galaxy, and then in certain other movies, but he's never going to win an Oscar. Gal Gadot or Gal Gadot, of course, she was red hot, for a quick minute. I believe a little bit in, what the hell is that one series of Vin Diesel? Fast and the Furious, then she went Wonder Woman, then she did other movies, but she's never going to win an Oscar. Like there are certain people in the NBA that in my view are superstar level players, but they're not championship level players. To me, superstar level players are players that, they're a superstar, they do great things. They might make the Western Conference Finals or Eastern Conference Finals or, they might even make a finals, but they can't confirmingly win that championship. To me, those are players like James Harden and, so far Luka Doncic and, certain guys like that. Jayson Tatum is kind of within the superstar range, kind of. But is he, a championship level player? I mean, I don't know. I mean, they won a championship with him, so I mean, to a degree, maybe. But is he the main piece? Because to me, to definitively declare you as a championship level player, you have to be debatably the main guy that ends up winning there, or you have to be in a main duality, kind of environment like a Kevin Durant or Steph Curry or Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, even to a degree, even though I don't think that that was as much of a duo as much as Shaq taking over. But I mean, it was, debatably more of a duo, overall, in my view, than some other ones. Of course, Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I just don't know if there's enough to really debate that Jayson Tatum was the main guy that was responsible.
Far more. I don't want to say appreciate it because I know people appreciate it, but there should be far more recognition that comes his way because of it.
Peter?
Yeah, maybe I don't travel in NBA circles enough, and I don't, I'm too tired and washed at night to spend my night, arguing with people on NBA Twitter. Who could be the people that don't appreciate or disrespect Jayson Tatum? I mean, this guy has done nothing but be the...
Well, maybe people aren't actually disrespecting him. Maybe people are ranking him in his proper place.
And now, in fairness and honesty, I'm a lifelong Celtics fan, and he embodies...
Right, so why are we going to bring this cornball on here overall to really give us, certain things? He's a lifelong Celtics fan, but he's supposed to give us his, expert and logical and objective analysis. Like, come on.
The incredible HBO doc that's out now about the Celtics, he embodies what Celtic pride is all about. The Red Auerbach, Bill Russell, Larry Bird way that is
Red Auerbach, of course, another one of the all-time great NBA coaches.
The Celtics. But I don't know what this guy has left to prove. If you're someone who would even think about coming sideways out of your mouth about Jayson Tatum, you're talking about a finals appearance, winning the finals, gold medals, a perennial just winning team, as Stephen A. talked about.
Right, but that's great. But with every factor that they've had, it was about damn time. Like what the Boston Celtics kind of are in the NBA, they were almost like the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 2010s. For those of you that remember, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, like Mike Tomlin, although he is a great coach, Mike Tomlin is almost becoming like the Doc Rivers of the NFL, to where they always have a good record, but whenever it comes to the playoffs, they're never going to beat the best team in the league. Like that's pretty much what ended up happening. Mike Tomlin would always get this great amount of praise, for having his team have a positive record every season, but then they would get blown out by the Jacksonville Jaguars, beaten by Bill Belichick, and the Steelers, beaten by the Denver Broncos. They would never defeat some of the more elite teams. And I mean, what does that really say about Mike Tomlin? As a head coach, that you can't even win another championship during that era. And you have Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Antonio Brown at one point in time all on the same damn team. And then on top of that, not a bad goddamn defense and a very good offensive line. So it's no offense against Mike Tomlin, but he's also one of the more overrated head coaches in sports history.
The way he carries himself.
But once again, the point being is that the Boston Celtics is that they had the coaching, they had the executives, they had the players, the talent. I mean, they were really looked at as being underwhelming for a very long time. So let's just not sit here and act like, this championship was not supposed to happen a while ago. It was.
The most famous thing that we know about Jayson Tatum outside of the game of basketball is his son's name. That's the
Who gives a shit?
kind of guy he is. He's known for his adorable son being on the court and playing ball. The guy has been the man, and I guess my question would not be, why is there disrespect? Who are the people who would show disrespect to Jayson Tatum?
I don't really like committing to things. I'm a
Boston Celtics won 64 games last year. They won the Eastern Conference by 14 games. They were 7 games better than the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were the favorites to win the championship throughout the season. They went 16-3 in the playoffs. They won the finals by an average, the 4 games, they won an average of 13 points. Jayson Tatum finished second to Jaylen Brown in the voting for NBA Finals MVP. There are 11 votes. The voting was 7-4.
Thank you, sir. Now, once again, there are certain players, in my view, that have lost the Finals MVP that, in my view, were deserving of it. Like when you talk about Steph Curry, in my personal view, I thought that he should have won it all the way back in 2015 over Iguodala. I even thought that there was a potentiality that he should have won it over KD in 2018, but I can understand why KD won the 2018 one. But the point is that, this criticism that was levied upon Steph Curry for such a long time now, maybe it was because Steph Curry was, kind of looked at in a higher perspective, like as one of the top 20 players of all time. Maybe that was why. I don't know. But, the thing is that, this criticism is going to have to follow Jayson Tatum around a little bit. It just is what it is.
ESPN had 4 votes. 3 of ESPN's people voted for Jayson Tatum.
And one thing that you can say about Steph Curry and Kevin Durant is that at least their statistics were comparable. Like, Steph Curry almost averaged a triple-double, I believe, in the 2017 series. Like, he was off the chain in that series. Jayson Tatum, like, he's not doing that shit. And then on top of that, he's not even shooting 40% from the field. Like, come on.
Okay. In the offseason, Brad Stevens was named Executive of the Year. We know that Jayson Tatum was named first-team All-NBA. Derek White and Drew Holiday were named to the All-Defensive team. After they won the championship.
Thank you, sir. So basically, what is he stating? Not only has Jayson Tatum been named to the first All-NBA team multiple fucking times, but he's had a great amount of help as well. Great amount of talent.
They went on a vacation to Miami where they celebrated for days. Disrespect was incredible. 1 million...
You tell him, Brian.
People, more than 1 million people came and rejoiced their championship
I love it when Brian Windhorst gets sassy.
with them. In the summer of 2023 and the summer of 2024, the starting 5 of the Boston Celtics signed contract extensions totaling more than $900 million. Jayson Tatum, Derek White, and Drew Holiday, more than any other team, all were named to the national team. 3 of the 4 American starters on the Celtics were named to the national team. We know that Jaylen Brown, who didn't get named, was the NBA Finals MVP. He had the Bill Russell Trophy, okay? They went over there, all of them playing an important role at different times.
Absolutely. And let the record be shown that more than likely that Jayson Tatum was not even the most second impactful player in that series. It was Kristaps Porzingis.
And won a gold medal.
Because they did not have an answer for Kristaps Porzingis at all.
That I'm going to tell you, whether you want to agree with me or not is your decision, was the most competitive and highest talent international tournament in the history of the sport. Okay? And in the final, the Americans beat the French on home soil in the most important game of everybody on France's team's career. Okay? In a glorious moment that everybody associated with it will remember for the rest of their lives. I am sorry. I cannot find where the disrespect is. Did it go?
Neither can I.
Absolutely perfectly? Did everybody make every single...
And this guy right here, this dude, that's a fan of the Boston Celtics, you know why he's laughing his ass off? Because he knows that Brian Windhorst got his ass. He completely tore apart his goddamn argument. No one gives a shit about any of this stuff. About, he's known for his cute son off the court. Who gives a fuck? This is basketball. This isn't a beauty pageant. Who gives a shit?
Shot? Did they win?
Now you notice that Molly Karam had a little bit of a smirk there, but Stephen A. Smith didn't. Now he'll state a little bit later on in this segment that, apparently he heard inside information that Jayson Tatum believes that he's getting disrespected. So that means what? That means that more than likely is getting that Stephen A. Smith that he's getting called, or that, he's getting, information directly from Jayson Tatum more than likely, especially because, he's holding Jayson Tatum to such a high degree of respect. And he's being very careful overall not to, laugh whatsoever.
2 games. And by the way, disrespect, they were favored by every sports book, everybody, from the first day of the season till this day. Even though the Thunder have been, and whatever you can find, maybe the Thunder are slightly heavy favorites because many people have put money on the Celtics. Nobody doesn't think the Celtics are favored.
Agreed. Thank you, sir.
I don't see the disrespect. I'm done talking about it. Thank you.
Well,
Stephen A., where's
He said, I'm done talking about it. Thank you. Finger snap pull. Brian Windhorst just dropped the mic. Oh, boy.
adversity here?
Well, the point is that Jayson Tatum and his folks from time to time feel, like I said, a lack of appreciation for all the things that you articulated. I think disrespect is too strong because I think it's impossible to disrespect him. I think only an idiot would try to disrespect Jayson Tatum. But the point is that when you accomplish all the things that he accomplishes and you see the shine being thrown in the direction of others, you do have people associated with.
But what really has Jayson Tatum really accomplished? I mean, it's great overall that he never missed a playoffs. That's great, but it's not like he's a Tim Duncan to where, he went on that franchise and the culture of it just completely turned around. The Boston Celtics were winning a decent amount of games and made the Eastern Conference Finals with like 5'2" Isaiah Thomas before Jayson Tatum even fucking got there. So, I mean, it's like, no offense, but it's not like Jayson Tatum was this major culture changer. So, I mean, it just is what it is. Give me a fucking break.
Him. And who knows whether it's him himself or not, who does feel that there's an elevated level of appreciation that they should be getting.
Steve, you know that's Jayson Tatum. Get the fuck out of here. Come on.
Which is what would prompt a discussion like this. That's not us doing it. That's certainly not you. That's not me. That's not others. But that doesn't mean he doesn't feel that way from time to time because he...
So basically what is Stephen A. Smith saying? Jayson Tatum believes that he's getting disrespected because certain people are talked about more than him, like Anthony Edwards and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and maybe even someone like a Luka Doncic. Let me tell you what, I would take all those players over that of a Jayson Tatum. Every single one of those players, in my view, is more skilled. They have more of a clutch gene, in my personal view. Now, do they have more on their resume than a Jayson Tatum? No, they don't. But the thing is that Jayson Tatum is not even debatably better than Jaylen Brown. He's made more first All-NBA teams, but one can argue that that's because Jaylen Brown has pretty much been told and, he's been very, good about taking a secondary role. But then when it comes to the finals, he's been mainly the one that's had to pick up the slack. So it's no offense, but I mean, Jayson Tatum, I'm sorry, I just don't see it. And if you were to ask me who I would pick over between Jayson Tatum and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Anthony Edwards and Luka Doncic and some of those guys, some of the best shooting guards in the league. Now, of course, we all know that Luka Doncic, I believe that he plays small forward, but the thing is that he really plays more like a shooting guard or a combo guard. So, I mean, let's just be real. I would pick every single one of those players over Jayson Tatum, period. Just is what it is.
All he's accomplished and all the work that he's put in, and he's seen people who have done less get more in terms of attention, notoriety, etc.
And I'm not usually someone that says that with someone because I'm usually more about results than what I am about the eye test. But the thing is that Jayson Tatum, with the amount of help and the executives and all this other stuff that he's had, you should have had 2 or 3 NBA championships by now. If you were really the guy that certain people were trying to allege that you were. So, I mean, I'm sorry, it is what it is. And then on top of that, the one time you guys finally do win a championship, you don't win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP nor the Finals MVP? Nah.
Yeah, I guess I'm just confused.
And the Eastern Conference has not been, the stronger conference of the two. It's gotten a little bit stronger over the years, but, it's been a little bit topsy-turvy. There's been certain times to where it's been very great, and there's been certain times to where it's been not quite as great. Now, of course, the Miami Heat, they've been very good, but no one really ever thought the Miami Heat were ever going to win the championship. The only reason ever, why they made it there was because of the excellent coaching of Eric Spoelstra. And, of course, of the great heart, and two-way playing ability of Jimmy Butler. But they didn't have this true star power of the Boston Celtics. And they still lost to the Miami Heat, I believe, on 2 separate occasions, which was partially Jayson Tatum's fault. So, I mean, it is what it is.
on how you could show more appreciation, but I guess that topic will be for
I look
another
at-
day
I look at
because
my
we have to
bank
hit the
account.
top of the hour. Yep, the bank account will make you feel pretty good.
Anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. But, I just kind of wanted to talk about that because, many people may debate if Jayson Tatum is disrespected or underappreciated. Do I believe that he is? No, absolutely not. And that's not me stating overall that there may not be certain people that do that. But listen, at the end of the day, just my personal view of it. Would I take, Jayson Tatum over Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards? No, wouldn't take him over any of them. Now I'd take him over certain players like a Tyrese Maxey, and certain guys like that. I'd take him over certain players like that, but when you want to talk about maybe a Donovan Mitchell, I might take him over certain guys like that. But in terms of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, and Anthony Edwards, no. Certainly not Luka Doncic or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in my view. But, we'll see. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later.